Hi everyone, welcome to ASMR Diary. My name is Jessica, and today we'll be continuing to read Moby Dick, starting from Chapter 3. Chapter 3, Queequeg. I think that's how you pronounce it. The stranger entered the room, taking no notice of me. I lay perfectly still without saying a word. I couldn't have spoken in any case. My whole body was shaking with terror. He put his candle down on a sideboard and placed the head beside it. The head was well preserved, with wrinkled skin and eyes that twinkled in the glow of the candlelight. It was a few moments before I managed to drag my eyes away and look at the man who had brought it into the room. What a sight! He was wearing a tall beaver skin hat, and beneath that hat was the most extraordinary face I had ever seen. It was darkish purple in color and covered with darker looking squares. I suddenly realized that the harpooner's face was a mass of tattoos. When he removed his hat, I saw that he was bald, but his head was covered in even more tattoos. And the fearsome man's teeth were shaped like shark's teeth. Each tooth had been carved to a sharp point. I would have leapt out of bed and escaped if I could, but now he turned towards the bed and saw me. I was as much afraid of him as I would have been had the devil himself strode into the room. He took off his shirt, and I saw that his whole body was covered with more dreadful tattoos. The next moment, he extinguished the candle and leapt into the bed. He was a huge man, and I was almost bounced out of the bed and onto the floor. At last, I found my voice again. I screamed. My own scream was immediately echoed by another, my bedmate's scream. It would have been hard to tell who screamed the loudest. "Landlord! Landlord!" I called. "Save me!" It seemed like ages, but at last Coffin's head appeared around the door. He held up his candle and looked down at his two guests. "You have nothing to worry about," he said to me, roaring with laughter. "It's the harpooner, your bedmate. He wouldn't harm a hair on your head." He then introduced me. "This is Queequeg. As I told you before, some say he was once a cannibal, but he never harmed anyone as far as I know. A good Christian gentleman is Mr. Queequeg." Queequeg didn't speak, but gave me a big smile with his pointed teeth and shook my hand like a country gent. I have to admit that after that, I slept like a log. I awoke the next day to find Queequeg already dressed in a thick jacket, leather trousers, and shiny black boots. He nodded in a friendly way as he put his beaver skin hat on his head. Then he reached for his harpoon, which I now saw had been hidden under the bed. He looked at it for a moment in an affectionate way. It was obviously a prized possession. He walked over to the small basin in the room and ran a little water. With the help of some soap, he shaved himself with one of the gleaming razor-sharp blades on the harpoon. Then, without a word, he marched out of the room. After breakfast, I walked around the town. I found myself in a chapel. It was full of sailors and whaling men, no doubt saying a prayer to keep them safe on the next voyage. The walls of the chapel were covered in memorial stones for lost whalers. One read, "Sacred to the memory of Robert Long, Willis Ellery, Nathan Coleman, Samuel Canny, Seth Macy, and Samuel Glegg, of the whaling ship Eliza, who were all towed away out of sight by a whale in the Pacific Ocean on December 31st, 1839. I noticed Queequeg in the congregation. He was saying his prayers. Just then, the chapel minister climbed into the pulpit. The actual pulpit was shaped like a ship's bow, and a swinging rope ladder was the only way to reach it. From the pulpit, he read the story of Jonah, who was swallowed by a whale. Queequeg and I walked back to the Spouter Inn together. Again, he didn't talk, but he seemed to be happy in my company. Afterwards, he gave me a present, his last shriveled head. I didn't want to offend Queequeg, but I managed to persuade the local barber to take the head in exchange for a haircut and a shave. Chapter 4. Aboard the Pequod. On Christmas Eve, the night of our departure, Queequeg and I were walking down to the ship when a stranger suddenly appeared out of the shadows. "Are you sailing in that ship?" he asked. "What ship?" said I. "That there," he replied, pointing to the Pequod, which was moored close by. I answered. "We have signed for a 3-year whaling voyage." "Perhaps you signed away your lives as well," said the stranger. "What are you jabbering about?" I asked. "You're going with Ahab, aren't you?" said the man. "What's it to you?" I replied, becoming rather annoyed at the man. "I sailed with him once, but never again," he said. "I saw him lose his leg. No man suffered more. No whale will suffer more when Ahab finds the creature that did it." "What's your business here?" I asked. "Some say I am a prophet," he answered, with a frightening gleam in his eyes. "They say I prophesied he would lose his leg. That prophecy came true. Now, so they say, I have made another prophecy, that the whale will eat the rest of all Ahab this time. Are you still ready to go with him?" "You're talking gibberish, man," I said with a stern frown. "You may say that," the man replied, "but beware of old Fedallah, a mystic from the East. You'll meet him one day. He's the only man who can frighten Ahab. Now I must be gone. I suppose there's no good I can do here now. If you sign to join the ship, what's signed is signed, and what's to be will be." "Now look here," I interrupted. "If you've got anything important to tell us, then out with it now." "I said all that's needed," replied the man. "Now I'll be saying good evening to you. I don't expect I'll see you again, unless it's in heaven on Judgment Day." The stranger slid away into the darkness. Out of the dark I heard his last words. "Oh, by the way, they call me Elijah." Neither Queequeg nor I answered the man. We continued on to the ship, where the other members of the crew were boarding. There was no sign of Captain Ahab then, or when the ship slipped anchor at 10 o'clock that evening. Soon we were free of the land. Our 3-year voyage was underway. The Pequod was an old, rather small, 3-masted vessel. Her ancient decks were worn and cracked. She had a helmsman tiller carved out of one great piece of whalebone. Between the foremast and the mainmast was a brick kiln and chimney. It had furnaces beneath it and 2 great iron melting pots on top. These were used to produce the oil from the whale's blubber, or fat. The sails above the kiln were already heavily stained with soot. There was still no sign of Captain Ahab, but Mr. Starbuck, the ship's first officer, explained why he was not on deck. "The captain's still abed," he informed us. "He's sort of sick, yet he doesn't look sick. He's a very strange man these days, is Captain Ahab." It was a cold and cheerless Christmas Eve we spent as we slowly glided out into the Atlantic Ocean. The misty, damp night chilled our bones. A screaming gull, no doubt lost in the darkness above, flew overhead. The ship began to roll in the swell as we committed our fate to the oceans. Chapter 5. Captain Ahab. I soon got to know most of the crew quite well. We settled into a routine as the northern ice and freezing weather gave way to warmer seas as we headed south. Each day started with lookouts scurrying up to the top of the 3 masts or mastheads as they were known. From here, all day long, and as long as the light remained in the sky, they kept a sharp lookout for the first sighting of any whales. From those high points, far above the ocean and tossed by the sea, novice sailors felt as relaxed as if they were standing on a bull's horns. And in the chill blast of winter gales, mastheads men could die of cold, or worse, be sent tumbling to their deaths. Yet, on warmer, quiet days, the view was so spectacular that I would often join Queequeg when he was on duty at the masthead. Queequeg, I discovered, was one of the 3 harpooners on the ship. The other 2 were Tashtego and Daggoo. Tashtego was an American Indian from Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. His family and his ancestors had worked in the whaling business for centuries. Tashtego had a reputation as a fearless and brave hunter. Daggoo was African. He was 6 feet and 5 inches in his socks. Suspended from his ears were 2 great golden rings. As a boy, he had joined a whaling ship in his native Africa and never returned home. He was said to be the sharpest whaling marksman on the ocean. The 3 harpooners spent much of their time up on the mastheads. After 3 days at sea, there was still no sign of the captain. I wondered if we were ever to see him. Then one morning, I came up to see a man standing on the quarterdeck. The figure filled me with a terrible sense of foreboding. It had to be Captain Ahab. He sent shivers running up and down my spine. Physically, he was tall and broad. He looked as if he was built of solid bronze. His face was well scorched by years on the ocean. A great livid white scar stretched from his right cheek all the way down to the base of his neck. Whether it was left by a wound or an accident at sea, I could not tell. A large hat shaded his eyes. So powerful was the whole grim look of Ahab that for a few moments I did not notice the horrific white leg on which he partly stood. It had been carved from the bone of a long dead whale. I was struck by the captain's posture. 2 holes, one on each side of the steering helm, had been drilled into the deck, and depending on which side of the helm he was standing, he planted his whalebone leg into one of the holes to steady himself. But he didn't stay in any one position for long. He continually paced the deck, a distant expression on his face. At night, he stalked the ship, the ghostly knocking of his whalebone leg echoing through the rigging. Occasionally, he sat down on an ancient chair by the helm. It was also made of whalebone. When he was sitting in the chair, you couldn't observe him without thinking how much he looked like an unhappy king. Then one evening, Ahab's powerful voice rang out. "Mooster, Mooster!" Or is it muster? I'm not sure. It's spelled M-U-S-T-E-R. Muster? Everyone on deck. In a few moments, we had all come up on the deck. The captain was looking excited. "What do you do when you see a whale?" he asked first. Sing out a warning," echoed someone of the crew. "And what's the song you sing then?" boomed Ahab. "A song to the death of the whale," came the answer. Ahab seemed cheered by the men's responses. He raised his right hand and then drew out a bag of gold from his pocket with his left. Some of you may have heard of the great white whale with its white head, wrinkled brow, speckled sides, and crooked jaw. This bag of gold is for the man who finds that whale for me. So be on the lookout for him. Watch for white water. If you so much as see a bubble, sing out loud." To my surprise, Queequeg called out to the captain, "Captain Ahab, that great white whale you talk of, is it the same one that some call Moby Dick? Is it the one that stole your leg?" "Moby Dick," roared the captain, his eyes flaming red. "Do you know this whale? Does he flick his tail in a strange way when he dives?" asked Queequeg. "Has he a curious blowhole? Does he have the remains of ancient harpoons rusting in his sides? Does he rise up and split hunting boats in two?" "Death and devils," cried Ahab. "You know the beast. You have described him true. Have you seen him?" "I have not seen him yet," replied Queequeg, "but I have heard of him. Was this truly the whale called Moby Dick?" "Aye," said Ahab, "it was Moby Dick. He dismasted me. He reduced me to this dread stump I stand on now. It was that accursed whale that stole my leg." "And was it prophesied that you would lose that leg?" continued Queequeg. "Aye, so they say," nodded Ahab. "It was Moby Dick that fulfilled that prophecy. But I have a prophecy for him now. I will chase him all the way from Africa to Australia and New Zealand to South America to capture him. And that is why I have gathered you here, men. Your job is to chase that whale until he spouts black blood and pays for taking my leg. Vengeance shall be mine." Mr. Starbuck, the first officer, was standing beside me. "The captain worries me," I heard him say to Mr. Stubb, the second officer. "What good is there in seeking vengeance against a dumb creature? The man's mad." But Ahab hadn't finished. He produced a bottle of rum and summoned his officers to drink a toast to the capture and death of Moby Dick. First he made Starbuck drink a toast, and then Stubb, and finally Flask, the third officer. Then he gave a tot of rum to each of his crew and made them swear to hunt Moby Dick to the death. Lastly, he beckoned to his 3 harpooners, Queequeg, Tashtago, and Daggoo, and made them drink a toast too. "Drink to the death of Moby Dick," he said, "and beg to be drowned if we don't catch that monster of the deep." Queequeg, Daggoo, and Tashtago willingly drank the toast. The whole crew, apart from Mr. Starbuck, seemed to be incapable of resisting the captain's calls. To all of us, the object of Ahab's hatred had already ceased to be an ordinary mortal whale. Now we were to hunt some godlike creature with unearthly powers. Captain Ahab had invested Moby Dick with a terror unimagined that day. And I'm going to stop at chapter 4 for today, and I will see you in the next video where we will read chapter 5. Have a good night. Bye.